Hi, welcome to Emotional Bandwidth. I'm Adrian. Let's get into it. So last week, I talked about feedback loops and how there are positive feedback loops and negative feedback loops, and some that are both. Last week, I gave one example of a positive feedback loop, just to recap, which was a self-reflection feedback loop, and I gave one of a negative one, proof/validation feedback loops. Today, I'm going to give you one positive, and I'm going to give you one negative, and then one that's an example of both. Okay, so hang tight. I'm going to give you the first one, which is positive. All right, team-based thinking feedback loop. All right, this is a positive one. Once you reach a level of honesty with yourself and others, you can influence and help others discover self. This loop allows you to magnify everybody's best qualities, since your level of self-awareness gives you the ability to recognize others outside of your preconceived notions. You can objectively encourage without disparagement because you are secure in yourself and your abilities. You can identify goals and set them accordingly. You lead by example, whether you realize it or not, because that is the natural position of self. You become a beacon of positivity and growth, not one of constant neediness and possession. Inclusion and development are words you will not only think of, but espouse in everyday life. Now, the next one is a negative loop. Hurt people loop. Okay? Unfortunately, in our dealings with other individuals, personally or casually, there are people we come across who have been wronged and want nothing more than to recreate the same destruction in other people's lives. In essence, they are stuck in that part of their functional and social development and they cannot move past it. They then enact the same feelings and behaviors on people in their orbit. This is an extreme loop and is reserved for narcissists and sociopaths. They want everything and nothing at all. Destruction is comfort for them. What's worse is even when it is brought to their attention, they can oftentimes be too broken that way to ever truly be free of that loop. But through therapy, they can recognize it and perhaps alert others to its existence. They are an emotional vortex. They will take everything out of you to give them some semblance of reality. They say if you argue in circles with someone, you'll only end up dizzy. Well, this is true in an emotional sense with these people. The more you try to help them, the more you will send yourself for a loop. It's best once you recognize the hurt this person or people are visiting upon you to get professional help or distance yourself from them if possible. I know sometimes this is troublesome because these people can be anybody in our lives, parents, siblings, lovers, and coworkers, and so it is hard to recognize in them, and even if you do, it can oftentimes be challenging to navigate since you have to live with them or deal with them on a regular basis. The good news is, once you take steps to recognize that this is happening, you can start recognizing that their behavior is not your fault. And if you are a victim to it, you can begin the steps towards healing yourself, recognizing their behavior as wholly their own, and start being able to separate their behavior and its effects from your personal sphere of influence. You can step back and recognize what is happening and call them out on it, or not, but maintain your emotional stability and balance outside of them. And now, I wanted to give you an example of a loop, emotional feedback loop that's both positive and negative, and I call this one the wounded animal loop. To piggyback off of the hurt people loop, sometimes these people are hurt and broken, but not to the point of hurting and destroying others' sense of self. Rather, they hurt themselves by not being able to trust others with their feelings. What the positive end of this tends to do is recognize it in these people and provides them with a safe space to come out of their shell and find their way back to a positive environment and relationship. There is a downside to this, however, because to nurse this person back to a state of emotional safety and personal balance, the nurturer in the relationship would mostly need to put their needs and wants on the back burner. To take on this type of issue, one would have to give the wounded enough emotional runway to take off and fly back to oneself. After they have found that confidence, it is not guaranteed that they will be able to in fact nurture the caretaker in this situation effectively, since they have been healing from a deep hurt and their empathetic senses have atrophied. To take care of themselves and heal, they have to ignore others' needs and just focus on themselves. Two things are what we hope for out of this loop: that the wounded can in time appreciate what has taken place, and now on mostly equal footing, aspire to create an emotional foundation built on a healthy, reciprocal basis. 2, that the initial loop that was created to shelter and heal this person transforms into a team-based loop, where both parties can in essence cheer on and assist each other in their personal and shared growth. Lastly, this can be negative for the nurturer in this situation if they go into it not realizing that they would have to put themselves aside for a while, or they become dependent on the needy nature of this feedback loop, thus falling into a proof/validation situation. They will only seek out situations where a person ostensibly needs them, and when it doesn't end in a satisfactory way, both parties can stunt each other's growth and, in fact, become resentful of each other. It is a fine line to walk for sure, but if you can pull it off, both parties will be better for it. It has the potential to be a good and bad, or good or bad, which is a very unique circumstance given all that's involved. So now, what does all of this mean? Well, there are certainly any number of positive loops and negative loops to be found out in the wild, as well as a combination of both. What we must do is really self-audit and figure out what emotional feedback loops we may be stuck in, or even a step further, what feedback loops we can be stuck in with family members, friends, and partners. Once something is acknowledged and accepted, you will then have the toolbox and gravity to deal with the situation as you see fit. These are just some of the examples of loops I have experienced or observed, and there are many I cannot conceptualize here, but I implore you to take time for yourself. We have all spent time we have all spent time and allow life to we all have to spend time and allow life to happen to us. We have all spent time allowing life to happen to us and not take ownership of anything that is happening around us. It is not easy per se, but once you can recognize and appreciate yourself, things will start contributing to your happiness and well-being, not take away from it. I hope if these things do not at least change your mode of thinking, they at least inspire some new thoughts and curiosities. I'm here for you always and want nothing but the best for you in all your endeavors. This has been Emotional Bandwidth. I'm Adrian. Take care.